We're always chasing what's hard to get. When something is too easy, we take it for granted. When someone is always around, we stop noticing their value. And when they're always reachable, we assume they're less important. That's how the human brain works. And the moment you understand this, you gain control. In this video, we'll talk about one of the most powerful tools in human psychology, not being available. But before we begin, ask yourself something. Are you always available? Always online? Always replying? Always showing up? Always saying yes? If you're, maybe it's time to rethink things. Because the one who's always available is the one people stop noticing. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is thinking they have to always be present to be appreciated. They think if they reply right away, always smile, always show up, they'll seem like a good person. But that's not how the human brain works. We don't react to what's always there. Not because we're cold or careless, but because our minds are wired to value things that are rare. Like gold, like time, like that one person who's not always around, but when they are, everything feels different. There's a psychological effect called scarcity bias. It means our brain automatically sees rare things as more valuable, even when it's not logical. When something is always available, we stop fighting for it. We stop noticing it. We stop respecting it. That's exactly why so many connections fade. When you're always around, always reachable, your presence blends into the background. You're no longer seen, no longer heard. And not because you did something wrong, but because you were too available. Sometimes, not being there is more powerful than being present. A delayed reply, a little silence, a bit of distance. It can make people stop and think. It makes them curious. It makes them miss you. It makes them realize you matter. When you're always online, always saying yes, always ready and waiting, people forget that your presence is a choice. They forget you could have said no. And when they forget that, you become ordinary to them, not special, not different. The human brain is built to notice contrast. We respond to difference, to surprise. When you suddenly disappear, it sparks something in the mind. Why didn't they reply? Where are they? Why aren't they like everyone else? And those questions are what make you unforgettable, not the answers. You don't always need to reply, not to be rude, not to play games, but because you understand how people work. Someone who's always available seems like their time is open to anyone. And when your time is open to everyone, it stops being valuable to anyone. The same thing happens in business. When a product is rare, people line up to get it. When it's everywhere and always in stock, it loses value. You're no different. Your time, your attention, your presence. They should be rare. You should choose who gets them, when, and how often. Not out of ego, but out of self-respect. Not being available doesn't mean you're cold. It means you understand that being too present makes you easy to forget. When you learn when not to show up, that's when your presence starts to matter. Julius Caesar was one of the greatest and most influential leaders in Roman history, who rose to the highest ranks through his political intelligence and unmatched power. His charismatic personality and extensive connections with senators and the people made him very popular. However, this unlimited accessibility to those around him became his greatest weakness. Caesar often attended the Senate without adequate protection and with complete trust in people who might not have had good intentions. He believed this behavior would earn him trust and loyalty, but the reality was quite different. On March 15th, 44 BC, known as the Ides of March, he was assassinated by a group of senators who saw him as a threat to the Republic. They exploited their easy access to him and attacked him without protection in a setting fully under their control. From the perspective of Niccolò Machiavelli, the famous political philosopher, leaders must always keep part of themselves out of reach to maintain their power and dignity. When a leader is too accessible to others, the aura of power fades and respect diminishes. Machiavelli clearly states that maintaining boundaries of power is a fundamental principle of successful governance, and ignoring this principle can lead to downfall and destruction. Caesar's story teaches us that being always accessible, even if it seems kind and respectful, can be the greatest vulnerability for any individual or leader. Maintaining healthy boundaries and appropriate distance not only protects against potential harm, but also strengthens a person's authority and character. This lesson is crucial for anyone seeking success in positions of power or personal life and must be seriously considered. Picture this. Most of us believe that being constantly available earns us more respect. We answer instantly, we never say no, and we assume the other person will value us for it. Reality flips that idea upside down. The human brain tunes out anything that is always present. When something is permanently within reach, it fades into the background, and once it becomes background noise, we stop fighting for it, stop wondering about it, and stop fearing its loss. In a world where everyone is online and reachable, the one who is occasionally absent stands out. That brief absence is exactly what makes someone intriguing. When you vanish for a while, delay your response, or leave a question hanging, the other person's mind can't stay neutral. It starts guessing, imagining, valuing, because our brains react far more strongly to scarcity than to abundance. Carl Jung once said, "What is constantly in plain sight is understood the least." He wasn't only talking about objects, he meant people too. If you're always seen, always replying, always on call, not only do others fail to understand you, they begin to overlook you entirely. Just like air that everyone breathes, yet nobody notices. You don't need to play games or act mysterious. You simply have to avoid being permanently on tap. Let people wait. Let them feel your absence. When you're perpetually available, they forget your presence is a deliberate choice. They forget you could choose not to be there. The moment they forget that, you become obvious, not valuable. In today's digital conversations, respond to every message the second it arrives, like every post. Stay eternally online, and your presence dissolves into the feed. Step back, let your silence echo, and the worth of your return multiplies because humans cherish what they see less of. Jung argued that to lodge someone in the unconscious, they must remain partly unpredictable. The mind stays alert only when confronted with a question. So if you want your presence to resonate, you don't need louder words or more screen time. You need to embrace occasional absence, deliberate pauses, and a refusal to hand everything over at once. In a world where everyone is shouting, the person who chooses silence is the one who gets heard. When Nikola Tesla opened the doors of his Sixth Avenue lab in 1895, he wasn't just showing off lightning from a giant coil. He was inviting anyone with curiosity to step inside, from eager investors to tabloid reporters. Science should open doors, not shut them, he liked to say. Yet that forever open door carried the seed of disaster. Months later, when a fire reduced the lab to ashes, Tesla was left penniless. Friends urged him to meet privately with J.P. Morgan to secure funding, but Tesla, loyal to his open house habit, let crowds stream through the office. The meeting that might have saved his wireless power project got lost in the noise, and Morgan's money went elsewhere, to Edison and rivals who negotiated behind closed doors. Through Machiavelli's lens, Tesla's flaw was a lack of distance. The Florentine warns that a ruler must never be too accessible or his aura of power dissolves. Tesla traded scientific authority for fleeting charm, surrendering the leverage privacy provides. Carl Jung offers a deeper read. Every genius carries a shadow, a suppressed need that erupts in behavior. Tesla's shadow was approval. A lonely boy from the Croatian mountains, he longed to be heard. The unlocked lab was an unconscious bid to satisfy that hunger, yet it delivered exhaustion, exploitation, and ultimately financial exile. The pattern repeated at Wardenclyffe in 1901. Workers, photographers, even tourists wandered the site. His secret blueprint for wireless power hit the papers months before any patent could shield it, letting competitors ring-fence him with hostile filings. Lacking exclusivity, Tesla borrowed money and scrawled IOUs in a shaky hand. Settled soon. In a notebook, he confessed, "If I close the doors, perhaps inspiration stays outside." Jung would call this the psyche's tug-of-war. The creative self wants to share, the protective self wants to survive. Tesla lacked that protective boundary, and creativity without armor became prey to brutal markets. Machiavelli advises scheduled, selective access so a leader's foundation isn't drained. Had Tesla limited visitors to curated windows, he might have preserved the focus and bargaining power needed to register patents and negotiate wisely. Instead, endless accessibility left him living out his final years in a New Yorker hotel room, bills unpaid, surrounded by unfinished diagrams. He fed breadcrumbs to pigeons in Bryant Park, still craving connection, but with no investors knocking. For Jung, that was the shadow's last mutation, a lifelong need for acknowledgement shrinking in a sad charity for defenseless birds. Tesla's life shows that perpetual openness, however friendly, can be a double-edged sword, attracting short-term attention while eroding leverage, concentration, and mental health. Machiavelli teaches the necessity of boundaries. Jung warns that neglected shadows take their toll. Tesla illuminated the world, but couldn't keep his own lights on because he never found the switch that dims the outside clamor. These days, more than ever, people are desperate to be seen. Social media is built to push us toward constant visibility, posting, updating, responding, staying online. And when we go silent for just a few hours, it feels like something's wrong. But right there in the silence lies a hidden kind of power, the power of being unavailable, of not reacting, of stepping away. When you're always around, your presence stops being interesting. It becomes routine. But when you intentionally choose to step back, you create space for curiosity and longing. And that space is one of the most powerful tools for making an impact, one that most people never think about. In romantic relationships, many believe that being more present means being more loved. But in reality, it's often the opposite. When everything is always available, it slowly loses its charm. If every message is answered right away, if every call is picked up instantly, the other person's mind doesn't have to work for anything. And when there's no effort, there's no lasting memory. The same rule applies at work. People who are constantly free, who reply instantly to every request, usually aren't taken as seriously. But when someone is busy creating, learning, or growing, and only responds at specific times, others naturally respect their time more. The message they send without words is, "My time has value." Even with parenting, this principle makes sense. A child who is flooded with everything they want all the time stops appreciating anything. If a parent is always available, always quick to respond, always fixing problems before they even begin, the child can grow numb to love, effort, or even the parent's presence. But when there's a little space, when the child learns to wait, to miss, or to work for something, suddenly, even simple things feel meaningful. This isn't neglect. It's teaching the value of space. Today, constant presence has become an exhausting habit. People who stay online all day, answering every message, liking every post, trying not to miss a single beat, they burn out. And strangely, even after all that effort, they still feel invisible. Because the human mind doesn't pay attention to what's always there. It filters out the noise. But someone who knows how to pull back, who understands when to be quiet, when to disappear, and when to return with presence, they don't have to shout to be heard. Like a beautiful piece of music, the silence between notes is just as important as the sound itself. You don't need to be everywhere to matter. Sometimes, just by not being there, by holding back, by delaying your reply, you end up standing out even more. Because the human brain, just like it did centuries ago, still reacts more intensely to what feels rare. If you learn to manage your presence, to know when to show up, when to hold back, how much to be seen, and when to stay silent, you'll naturally separate yourself from the noise. And it's in that intentional silence that real respect, connection, and influence begin to grow. At first glance, being unavailable might sound like a bad thing. We're taught from a young age that showing up means you care. That being available means you're responsible, kind, and committed. But when you look deeper, you realize that sometimes not being there can have an even bigger impact than constantly showing up. People naturally think more about the things they have less of. That simple truth shows up everywhere, in relationships, at work, in learning, in art, and even in the way we understand ourselves. When you're always around, people forget that your presence is a choice. When you always answer right away, your voice starts to blend into the background. When you're always visible, people stop truly seeing you. But when you learn to step back, to stay quiet at the right moment, to create a little distance, your presence gains weight. Not because other people change, but because you've created space that they want to fill by thinking about you. This isn't a trick. It's not a strategy. It's part of emotional maturity, the ability to know when to be present and when not to be. Carl Jung taught us that what's always in front of us is rarely understood. Our brains don't invest energy in things that are predictable or repetitive, but we stay curious about what feels just out of reach. That curiosity is what gives something or someone lasting impact. So if you want to be remembered, if you want to make an impression, if you want to truly be seen, it's not about saying more or showing up more. It's about knowing when to hold back. Because sometimes not being there is exactly what makes people feel you more when you return. In a world full of noise, the one who chooses silence is the one who actually gets heard. If this message felt familiar, or if you think you might need to hear it again someday, go ahead and save this video. Some lessons are worth revisiting, especially the ones that remind us that space, silence, and absence are part of real power.